A really efficient totalitarian state would be one in which the all-powerful executive of political bosses and their army of managers control a population of slaves who do not have to be coerced because they love their servitude. Aldous Huxley. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Secrets of Saturn. My name is Jason Lindgren. I am your host. Tonight I have Russell Blattberg joining us once again as my co-host. Good evening, Russell.
Good evening, man.
And tonight we're going to be interviewing a young lady named Amy Jessina Janssen, who has a very disturbing story to tell. Amy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jason and Russell.
No problem.
You're very welcome. Amy, just go ahead and tell your story.
Okay, so I guess to start, I should start at the beginning, and the beginning is in January of 2011, and it was when I asked my children's father to leave our home. His last financial act for our family was a $45,000 insurance fraud scheme, and growing up in a family of law and banking, I couldn't have anything to do with that, and that was on top of 4 years of complete and utter misery with him. And on January 4th, 2011, he left our home with my two children. I had a 4-month-old daughter, Vivian, and a 3-year-old daughter, Sophia. He had moved into his mother's home, her apartment, and that's ultimately where he spent the next 3 years sexually abusing my daughter, domestically abusing and myself, my children, and also using the courts and Child Protective Services and all my family and friends and the lovely group of Alcoholics Anonymous to ultimately try and ruin me, and while ruining my children. He started sleeping with Sophia in secret on January 7th, 2011. And I realized the first weekend that they came home that something was going on because they were just wrecked, and it took me about 3 weeks to figure out. First, my daughter started wetting the bed, then she started sleepwalking, then she started having night terrors, and gradually things were getting worse and worse. He was not paying any child support, he was not taking care of anything, and he was having a lot of fun. So I stopped the overnights, and I swear to God, the only reason I let him have overnights was because he was living with his mother. And even the church told me not to let him have overnights because the marriage counselor said that he wasn't emotionally mature enough. And don't I wish I would have listened to that now, but I didn't. And so then I stopped the overnights in about March, maybe it was 2 months later. And I got us a neutral child specialist, and we went over there, and that was when he first served me with a court document, a stipulation, where he was fighting me for custody of our children. Now, granted, this man had nothing to do with me or my children for 4 years prior. In fact, he left me on the afternoon I gave birth to our second daughter, and he left to the casino with his father, and I didn't see him for a while, and I had kind of an emergent situation that day because I had health problems. I had over 1,000 needle injections in my belly to bring that baby into this world, and my Vivi Rose, she's my angel baby. She's ultimately what gave me the strength to have him leave our home. I left him with 2 children and no money. All the bills were in my name. I lost my career, my health. So anyways, that was the first time he started using these secret lawyers, right? And you should know that there's a program out there for fathers who are evil and who would like to inflict evil upon their spouses and their children. And it comes through these fathers' rights groups. Not all fathers' rights groups, but there are some. They also come through Catholic charities and so anyways, that's how they kind of formulate, and there's a guidebook, right? I haven't quite figured it out, but in the state of Minnesota, it's called the Unmarried Father's Guide to Paternity, Child Support, and Custody. It's basically a handbook on how to abuse the women, the children in the system. It's written by fathers' rights groups. anyways, and there's no handbook out there for single mothers, by the way. So when we went to see the neutral child specialist, she had created this plan for us. Well, I had did something really stupid, and it wasn't stupid at the time, but I got married, and I was married for 3 months to this guy who was, I thought he loved me, whatever, and he did love my children. He was very good to my children, but that ultimately opened up the doorway for my ex to pick up his abuse to a level of which I now can't speak about without getting extremely angry. And so the couple weeks after I got married, my children's father, I wouldn't let him see the girls for about a couple weeks in May of 2011 because he was just out of his mind, like rageful, and I knew he was doing really bad behaviors. And my daughter said, my daddy knows how to keep secrets, and now I know how to keep secrets too, and just a gamut of things that were going on. And so I just decided that he needed like a cooling off period. And anyways, so the first weekend that he had my children was Memorial Day weekend 2011 by himself, and he decided to take my children up to see his father up on the Iron Range in Minnesota. And that was where ultimately he ended up having my 4-year-old daughter completely interrogated by, I guess in her words, men in suits. She called them nice guys in suits. But she said she wasn't going to listen to those nice guys in suits tell her to be naughty to her mommy anymore. When she came home from that visit, the next night, she stood on top of my bed, and she dumped a Mountain Dew can upside down on my bed. And she held her arms out at me, and I was just like, Sophia, what is the matter? And she was like, or I said, what is going on? I was like, what's the matter, baby girl? And I got her down off the bed, and I started walking into her room because I was, going to sit her down in her room, and, I was going to yell at her or something, and something stopped me on the stair steps, and I just sat her down on the steps, and I was like, baby girl, what is going on? And she said, I swallowed a speckle at my daddy's house, and now I have mean bones in my arms, and I can't control myself, and my tummy hurts, and I need to go to the doctor. It was 9 o'clock on a Monday night, and she went into her bedroom, and she took her nightgown off, and she put her big girl clothes on, and she met me at the front door, and she was ready to go to the doctor. I drove her to the emergency room in Waconia, Minnesota, and I had her examined. We didn't know what was going on, and ultimately outside of the hospital room, when we were getting ready to leave, I asked the doctor what he thought was going on, and he looked over at me and he said that at the very least manipulation was occurring by her father. Because he did not write this down on a piece of paper, Child Protective Services wouldn't do anything about it. That was my first report, was June 2nd, 2011, to Child Protective Services in Carver County. Now we're going to go through the summer of 2011, where all kinds of crazy stuff happened, and my daughter had all kinds of behaviors and sexual behavior. So the next time that she disclosed some serious information was in September of 2011, the day, I think it was the first or second day of school at her preschool, and she showed me how her daddy falls on her. And sometimes he falls with his clothes on and off. Sometimes he falls with them on, and sometimes he falls with them off. And she showed me how he falls on her. And then she showed me how her daddy and her French kiss underneath the silk sheets. And that Grandma Peggy can't know. And that sometimes they do it with baby Vivi. And that was my second CPS report to Carver County, Minnesota. And I have the CPS report whereby he admits in the report that he is sleeping with our daughter. And I want everybody to know that I am not reporting to Child Protective Services about my daughter cuddling with her daddy. I am reporting about the fact that my daughter is being made to keep it a secret. That's what I was reporting, and the behaviors that were going on along with it. By September of 2011, my daughter had already been trained to not speak about what goes on at her daddy's house. My second CPS report, I brought her to Children's Hospital in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and had her examined by a children's forensic psychologist, and because she didn't speak whatever they asked her in the 1.5 minute interview, mind you, she was trained to not speak for 9 months at that point. They didn't find any abuse. In fact, they yelled at me in that interview that this wasn't about child support, because see, also while he was sexually abusing my daughter and making her keep secrets from her mama, and my other daughter, who was a baby at the time, he was also training the institutions to prepare to help him abuse us. And so they all thought it was over child support, and the CPS report shows, yes, I sleep with my daughter. I sleep on the top sheet, and she sleeps underneath the sheet. And Child Protective Services in Carver County actually made a safety plan because they didn't want something like this to keep happening, whereby Sophia would just sleep in pajamas in her own bed. Well, that's not what happened. In fact, fast forward to we went through court. Carver County actually has me making $42,500 a year and him making $27,000. And mind you, I was medically disabled at the time and hadn't worked in 3 years, and they made our child support based upon me making $42,000 a year and him making $27,000, which he totally lied about how much he was making. And I mean, I've got 20 paycheck stubs showing him making $20 an hour, whatever. It doesn't even matter. But so it's like a combination of abuse, right? And by now he already had the Child Protective Services were on his side, the child support workers were on his side, the county attorney for Carver County was on his side, and he also had secret lawyers that he was working with. But he would show up to court and act like, oh, poor me, I don't have a lawyer. She left me, blah blah blah. So they make us women out to be mentally retarded while abusing our children. And so then we go to about November 21st of 2011, and that was when I had a court order finally for $1,200 a month in child support, and visitation was set out, and everything was set. And I thought, oh my God, 11 months of economic abuse, and I left out all of the economic abuse that had gone on for those 11 months. The man evaded paternity through 2 counties. He's not even on their birth certificate right now, and to evade child support. And so I get the court order for child support, and that was just the beginning of our hell and our nightmare. I thought we were done fighting, and oh no, that was just the beginning. You see, because these guys have this plan where they give the women the custody, you see, at first, because what this is they go in after them after about 2 years. All of us women are all at about 2 years where it's post-dissolution transfers of custody. It's like a 2-year program of abuse, and I'll get to that in a second. So I sign a lease based upon a $1,200 court order for child support, only to find out a month later that that there's a clause that he knew about. I didn't know anything about it. I never had a lawyer, and that he could have the child care portion of child support administratively suspended if one of the parents decides that child care support isn't needed. Well, child care support was $700 of $1,200. So he pays 1 month of court order child support, and already he's down way underneath half. And now I'm looking at my mother to help me with the rent. I had gotten a paralegal job and had gotten fired from that because of, chaos. I had gotten another paralegal job in May of 2012, and he had been serving me, 6 months worth, or in those 6 months, he served me 6 different stipulations of $0 amount in child support and 50% custody. And he would never give up he had to have these Tuesday overnights because there's this 12% reduction in child support. So anyways, he got me fired from my next paralegal job because he made arrangements to have his mother help me watch the children so I could get up on my feet. And then he slammed the children back at me, and all of a sudden his mother couldn't do it. And then I got fired, and then because I didn't have childcare, and then all of a sudden his mother could take care of the kids again. And the reason I'm telling you all this is because it's just a little glimpse of the game that he's been playing. And because I wouldn't sign these stipulations, these new order, 1 month after I got a court order, I'm already getting new stipulations for $0 amount in child support. And that was when he started fighting me for custody. That was also when my daughter was, I don't want to give away too much privacy, but horrible behaviors of a beautiful child that were not normal. And I should know because I've spent from the time I was 9 years old until now taking care of children. I used to watch 14 kids a day for 6 years. It's just, I know children and I know the law, and I'm disillusioned right now at what's happening with my children. She started, I don't even want to go there. So then after I got fired from that job, and all of a sudden he could, then he falsely charged me with domestic abuse against my children, based upon a bipolar diagnosis I'd gotten 6 months earlier, with the help of my mother, who made 2 concerned phone calls to my psychiatrist of 7 years, and who gave me a 15-question questionnaire and diagnosed me bipolar in the middle of a divorce, a custody dispute, and a move in the middle of winter with 2 children. So the judge who actually took my children this time, actually called him out in court and said, "Mr. Pallaranta, you are in the wrong court to switch custody." He basically told him it was false allegations of domestic abuse, ordered him to immediately return my children, and he did it. And it took 2 different police stations to get them back. Meanwhile, my children come home and they tell me that their daddy says they're never going to see them ever again. This guy's already getting a new girlfriend. It's like, I'm starting to get a little bit lost here because it's so much stuff, but he used those domestic abuse charges against me, the false allegations, to get this new girlfriend that he's got. And she's a social worker, by the way. I'm not quite sure if she's involved in what's going on or if she's ignorant to it. So that part I haven't figured out yet. But he is using her daughter to psychologically abuse my daughter, because there was an incident where he used her to call my daughter. And, after the phone call conversation, I thought her boyfriend broke up with her, for God's sake, and it was horrible. That was in January 2011. So then he sues me for custody after I go homeless in 2012, because by then I had lost 2 jobs. I was homeless again with 2 babies. He didn't come after me then, because he's never wanted my children. And then in September, he sued me again for custody, like, "Welcome to kindergarten, here's another custody dispute." And this was right after I had told him that our daughter needed therapy because something was going on, and immediately he threatened with taking custody. In Scott County, this woman named Deborah Battles, who was a psychologist who I spoke to for 5 minutes, told me that it sounds like grooming to me. That was stated in Scott County. So there's about 5 counties in Minnesota who are involved, who all are aware of what's been going on, who I've reported to, and who have literally done nothing to help us. So he tries to put a stipulation through the court in September with my signature on it, with this screwed up lawyer. And had I not had this feeling that I should call the court, they were actually his lawyer was actually putting before a judge a stipulation with my signature on it for $0 a month in child support and over 50% custody. I just had this weird feeling I should call the court that day, and sure enough I did. And I even had the email from one of the county attorneys saying, "So I guess we don't have an agreement." And I received messages that Miss Janssen absolutely made no agreement and will never make an agreement, and to be suspicious of anything that comes my way. So, we've got fraud, we've got manipulation, we've got sexual abuse, we've got domestic abuse, economic abuse, we've got institutional abuse. I can tell you all the times about how the child support officer would sit behind his side. He used these, they do it together. Anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. So I'm going to fast forward to where we're at in 2014, where it kind of picked back up again, and he moved in with his girlfriend in September, and I honestly let my guard down a little bit because I thought, my children are safer and with him having a girlfriend, and that was a big mistake because she's, I don't know how to tell the details I don't want to hurt my daughter's privacy and disclose the behaviors, but last fall
That's all right.
she was exhibiting some behaviors, and she developed this psychological nose grunting problem, which happened right after what I believe now is the result of her being, well, first of all, trained for 3 years to be quiet, told that I would die, me, her mother, I would die if I knew the secret, and that she'd been penetrated. And she was so confused that I think that she developed this psychological nose grunting problem. And I brought her to the doctor, and they said that it was to give her Benadryl for 2 weeks, and let's see how it goes. Well, I've tried 7 times in 3 years to bring my children to a therapist, and 7 times this man has done something to knock me financially off my wheel, where I then immediately lost my home and was threatened with having my children taken from me. He has my mother, my sister, half of my family. 300 of my closest AA friends have all turned on me. They all think that I'm, crazy. And he's good. He's really good, and he's getting away with it. And so in January, I remember not being able to wait until the girls got to go for a week over at their daddy's. I'm a single mother, and I've had health issues, and I just needed a break. And this is where my guilt lies right now, and my shame, in that I needed a break from being a single mother. Isn't that horrible? And something happened, because when they came home on January 1st, my 7-year-old daughter, who came home in slippers and pajamas because he didn't want his things to come to my home, like her boots and her clothes, she had an aggressive outburst, of which I've never seen before, and her whole entire body clenched up, and she was gritting her teeth, and her nose grunting problem was back, and I had to pick her up, and, well, I didn't have to, but I ran and I picked her up, and I brought her over to the kitchen window, and I started rocking her and singing to her, and we sang our song, the I See the Moon song, and after a little bit, she kind of snapped out of it, and while she was doing that, my other daughter had taken off all of her clothes, and she started running around and touching butts. She was touching, came up and touched my butt, and she touched her sister's butt with her clothes off. And she's only 3 years old, and she had never done anything like this before. And I remember hollering, and I said, "All right, girls, what in the hell happened over at your daddy's? Like, what is going on?" And Vivian started to talk. And then Sophia said, "Vivi," and she stopped her. And I didn't know what to do. And so I said, "All right, girls, let's go upstairs, and we're going to take a bath." And so I go upstairs, and I run a bath. And Vivian had an aggressive outburst. Her whole entire body clenched up, and she started gritting her teeth, and I didn't know what the hell was going on. And I got done rocking her, because I sang the song to her too, and she kind of came out of it, and I figured it was... I don't know what I figured, but I was leaning over the bathtub, and as I leaned over the bathtub, my 3-year-old daughter came up behind me and ever so gently swiped my vagina with her hand. And I just sat down right away, and with my girls on the bathroom floor, and we had to have the talk about how, we don't touch butts, and we had to have the talk about our privates, and I put him in the bathtub, and I gave him a bath and washed him up and brushed their hair and got him dressed. And I remember thinking that something terrible had happened. And within that week, my daughter, school started the next day. She had to go back to school at her new town, and she couldn't remember how to spell her name. And she's in 1st grade. And so we've been spending, a year and a half at this point on phonics and writing her name. And she couldn't remember how to spell her name, and she couldn't remember how to do her phonics. And She was a 10 out of 10 spelling test student, and she dropped down to 8 out of 10, and then the next week it was 5 out of 10, and the next week after that it was 4 out of 10, and that's when I called the school and I had a meeting. And I told them that that something was wrong and that I suspected sexual abuse, and that, I just needed everybody to be aware, and that if my daughter were to come to the nurse's office that I needed to be notified. And they asked me if I wanted the public health nurse to come out to my house, because we had just moved into this big house in the country and nothing worked. Everything was broken. And so I said, sure. I said, I need all the help I can get to make sure, I'm doing everything right, get us on track. I needed help. And the public health nurse came out, and I remember her sitting there talking with me the first time. And she said, what if, because I told her all the stuff that had been going on, and she said to me, what if he is terrorizing your daughter the way he is terrorizing you? And that was when it flicked in my head. And the next day, I took both my daughters to the medical doctor in our little town in Dassel, Minnesota, and a nurse examined both of my children. And I remember her examining Sophia, and she looked, and then she started to walk away, and then she came back and she looked again, because she saw exactly what I saw. But see, the fact that she's not experienced in sexual abuse of children, and she was just a nurse in a small town, she didn't see anything. She didn't write anything down. And so the next day, because that nurse had to make a report, anytime there's a suspect of sexual abuse, the next day I went into Child Protective Services and sat down with an investigator and also with the Child Protective Services worker, and had my first taped interview. And about 10 minutes through, they didn't believe me, and they thought that I was lying. And I didn't know what was going on, and that's what I've been stipulating this whole time, is that I don't know what's going on, and that's why I keep reporting whatever the behaviors are going on, because I'm trying to figure out what's going on. That Child Protective Services worker told me to check myself into the mental facility over the weekend while I was just twiddling my thumbs. Because, of course, that's what all single mothers are doing when they are in my situation. We're twiddling our thumbs. So a couple weeks later, February 7th, was the day I had my daughter at the dentist. It was for free smiles, dental cleaning. We didn't have dental insurance. And my daughter had the most traumatic experience that I've ever witnessed in my entire life, or even seen or heard about anywhere, at the dentist. And that it's still horrifying. The image is clear in my mind. And I had to meet her daddy after that dental appointment. He took off work early to meet us a town away to give us the Lenovo tablet that he had bought my daughter for Christmas. She was 6. And we went, and I met him at the cafe, and the girls sat with him to eat, and he wanted me to sit with him, and he had this look on his face, because by now he was well aware that Child Protective Services had been called by me for the 3rd time on suspicions of sexual abuse, and he looked defeated. He looked like the jig was up, and he wanted me to sit with them real bad, and I wouldn't sit with them. I made up, I said I got to go clean out the car, and you can sit with the girls, and I watched him and from outside, and I was afraid to sit with him because I was afraid of what I would say or do in front of my children, to be honest with you. And the next morning, that night, after the girls went to bed, I picked up that Lenovo tablet, and I looked at the browser search. And the browser search, the first thing was this thing called www.backdoor.com/Minneapolis-St. Paul. And when I clicked on it, it went to this, child sex trafficking site. And I panicked, because I was like, what in the hell is that? The next browser search was for these trials that he was browsing for on men who are getting away with murdering women. Then the next search was for Cabela's gun shop. And the next search was for, I can't remember what the next search was, but it was just equally disturbing. But then I went and hit the Gmail button, and up popped his account. And at first glimpse, it just looked like, the generic email account that you have to use to hook up to the new tablets and such. And till I looked closer, and it was all these, like over 150 of these Amazon.com receipts. And when you opened them up, they were for like kids games and, hostage games and, Bejeweled, whatever, like all these video games and stuff. And like, I'm against video games for my daughters, and so that's what he uses and whatever. I'm not going there, but I found a hypnosis receipt dated December 28th, 2013. And I forgot to mention a really important part, and that is that on January 1st, when my girls came home and they got into the bathtub, my daughter had bruising on the inside of her thighs, the upper part of her thighs, and she had no idea how they had gotten there. So that's an important part. And so I found that hypnosis receipt, and then I looked, and there was massage parlor receipts for Minneapolis, all during that week that he had my girls for Christmas break. Then there was boudoir photo session receipts. I don't know about you guys, but if you know anything about child sex porn or child sex trafficking, this kind of stuff is right in line with what these guys are doing. And Japanese restaurants and just weird, bizarre shit. And I don't know what hit me, but the next morning, well, it did hit me. I do know what hit me. It hit me. And the next morning, my daughter got up at about 5:30 in the morning, and she came in because she hasn't slept through the night, since she was a baby. She has all these night terrors, and she told me all these times about how she was getting the flu over at her daddy's house, and he would take her for walks to get soup. I mean, there is so much abuse involved in this. It's not even funny. Last September, it came out at the dinner table about how their daddy let them hold his shotguns. And when I asked my daughter what she was pointing at, when she held daddy's guns, she told me the mirror. She's like, at myself in the mirror. And then she told me that baby Vivi got to hold it too. And so they did it in the back bedroom of his mother's house. He put shotguns in my little girl's hands and showed them how to shoot at themselves in the mirror. I have an email that I sent him in September about that. So I sat down with Sophia that morning because I needed answers, and enough was enough. And I used a book that I had gotten 2 weeks earlier from the preschool resource center. And it was called How to Talk to Young Children About Uncomfortable Touch, a Parent's Handbook on Sexual Abuse. And there was 7 steps inside of that book. It was step 1 through 7. And one of the steps, I think it was like 4 or 5 or something like that. You had to actually and it told you how to talk to your children, and it showed you what you're supposed to do. You had to act things out. And the one thing we had to act out was how we had to stand up. And if somebody is, in our space or whatever, too close to us, that, you stand up and you put your hand up and you yell no. And, you've never seen a little girl stand up and holler no so fast in your entire life with such conviction as my 7-year-old daughter that morning. Step 6 was giving up the secret. And it took about 20 or 30 minutes for that part. And it was very traumatizing for both of us, I can assure you. Step 7 was calling for help. And just to go back to step 6, my daughter confirmed and disclosed more things than I ever could have imagined, even suspecting, in my wildest dreams. Step 7 was calling for help. And you were supposed to ask the child if they wanted to call for help. And I asked my daughter if she wanted to call for help, because calling for help is supposed to stop the abuse. And she said yes. She wanted Mommy to call the police. Okay? She's 7. She's been holding on to a secret for 3 years. she told me that I would die that morning. And she cried how she doesn't want me to die. Okay? So immediately after she disclosed, she started talking like a baby in my arms, and I was rocking her, telling her everything was okay and that she was the most perfect child that God ever made and that she could never do anything wrong. It took me a while to explain to her that by keeping the secret, you protect the abuser, and how important it is to tell the truth, and that secrets keep us sick. I called the police. I went outside to the garage and I reported it to the police in Meeker County, Minnesota. And now this was my second report in 2 weeks to the police and to Child Protective Services of suspected sexual abuse. The first report I did without my daughter because I was trying to do it on my own. I was trying to do it without traumatizing my child or, having anything bad happen to her. And that morning, I even yelled at them on the phone. I said, I said, every person I've reported this to has fucked this up before. And I said, please don't fuck this up. And when the dispatcher finally gave me to an officer and I told him what was going on, the guy that was sitting with him on the line or whatever hollered out bullshit in the middle of my report. Okay, so the police now are hollering out bullshit at my report. All right. So I get off the phone. They told me to take the tablet with the sex trafficking information and the boudoir photo sessions and all this shit. And they told me to bring it to the investigator on Monday morning. And they would look at it. Monday morning turned out to be too late because I was hosting my daughter's birthday party that morning. So I went back inside the house because it was February. It was cold outside. I was out there for a while. I go back inside, and I'm sitting down on the kitchen floor, and my other daughter is still sleeping, and it was about 7:30 in the morning. And Sophia was in the room, and she was coloring a picture. And she brought me over this picture, and she stood in front of me, and she handed me this picture, and it was a picture of a face with eyes and the nose and the ears and the hair and earrings in the ears and eyelashes and no mouth. And she stood in front of me, and she handed me the piece of paper, and she made the zip it sign across her lips. And then she wanted to go in color. And she started asking me about her birthday party that I was supposed to be hosting that day. We can begin to decorate. She wanted to decorate for the birthday party. And she wanted everything to be normal, okay? And I told my baby, I said, do you believe Mommy when Mommy tells you that I'm going to stop the abuse? Because she is frightened to death, let me tell you. What these people have been doing to my children, these nice guys, what these people have been threatening with my daughter, not to mention her father, is criminal, to say the least. She has righteous fear. They have frightened her to death. She told me that my mommy keeps promises, not secrets. And so that's what I'm doing, is I'm trying to keep my promise, and there will be no secret. So I call my mother, and I tell my mother what's going on, and I tell her she needs to come down to sit with me and my girls and to help me because I needed help. And after my mom gave me a bunch of bullshit on the phone, and, she wanted to know, what did Sophia say? What did she say? What did she say? Well, I'm here to tell you right now, for everybody who's listening. She didn't say very much, okay? It wasn't what she said. It was what she didn't say. It was what she looked like. It was how she looked at me, how she buried her head in my shoulder, in my chest. Okay? So it was hard for me to just come right out and say, and I can't say now on the radio because I'm trying to protect my daughter's privacy. So my mother did come, and in the meantime I was sitting there on the kitchen floor with all these thoughts, and I started writing on this note card all my thoughts, and one of those thoughts was that I prayed the police find him before I do. Otherwise, I'm going to blow your dick off with the shotgun that you put in our little girl's hands and bury you out back and spit on your grave on Sundays. And then, I made it his G+ profile picture to out him, not to threaten him, to out him to the 300 people he had been calling me crazy to for 3 years. Okay, people? So then I go to Walmart after my mom gets there because I still had an entire birthday party for 4 little girls from the brand new school in our brand new town that I had to put on in just a couple of hours. I didn't have the cake, I didn't have the gifts, I didn't have the decorations up. Clearly it was not the appropriate timing, but I was supposed to have the birthday party the week before, only he used a clause in our stipulation to come and take my children out crying on the weekend before when I was supposed to host the first birthday party on her actual birthday. He kicked his foot through my front door and took my kids out. Okay. So this was our second attempt at the slumber birthday party my daughter wanted to have so bad. He waited 14 hours. In the middle of the night, at 3 o'clock in the morning, I got a knock on my door, and it was 2 Meeker County police officers, the ones that I'd spoken to. In fact, one of the officers said, "Hey, do you remember me?" Because I remember talking to him in the gas station a couple weeks before, and I asked him the question, what kind of evidence do you need to prove sexual child abuse? I actually asked him that in the gas station parking lot when I was trying to figure all this shit out. And he remembered me. And then there was one Carver County police officer, and that's the one we're worried about here. Well, now I know that Meeker County is involved in this sex trafficking scandal. I know that Ramsey County is involved. That's St. Paul, Minnesota. Probably Hennepin County, I'm guessing. There's also a couple counties up north, and possibly Olmsted County. There's a number of counties that are actually involved in sex trafficking of children. They charged me with terroristic threats, felony terroristic threats, for changing his G+ profile picture with that. And they came and they arrested me, and he tried to have my children put in foster care that night. They wouldn't let me call my mother. She had left, she had her things, she had whatever. She's not for my children. So I got arrested. All those parents got called, and honest to God, I spent 3 days in jail, and I'm telling you right now, that was not an attack on me, having me arrested. That was an attack on our 7-year-old daughter, to let her know what would happen if the secret come out. Because since then, we spent 5 consecutive days after I got out of jail running from him. He was sending police officers over to our house to do well checks. He was calling it was like over 17 phone calls in 3 days. I think it was 54 phone calls in a week is what I got that week. He was using it
from police officers?
No, from my children's father, trying to get a hold of Sophia on the telephone. So he wanted to talk to Sophia, right? And no, the police officers didn't call for us at all. He was sending them out to us to do welfare checks because I couldn't send Sophia to school because he was waiting for her to come get her. And I wouldn't let her out of my custody. And because Child Protective Services had gone to her school and they asked her what this was the investigation of Meeker County Child Protective Services from the January 27th or 28th report. They went to my daughter's school, unbeknownst to me, pulled her out of class, brought her into a room, and asked her what her favorite TV shows were, gave her a piece of candy, and sent her back to class. I would never have even known that happened had my daughter not told me she met the nice lady who gave her candy, okay? So that was the result. That was the end of their investigation. He told them that I have a mental condition. They accepted it. They asked my kid what kind of TV shows she liked. She told them Victorious and SpongeBob, I think. And that was it. That was how they investigated. So now let's fast forward to Wednesday, a couple days after I got out of jail. And it was about 20 minutes after he had sent the second sheriff over to our house to do these, these welfare checks. Like, I'm sorry. he hadn't done a welfare check on anything in 4 years. And now all of a sudden, after my report, all of a sudden he's doing welfare checks. He was doing it to scare us. We were sufficiently scared. I told the second deputy what had happened and that I had just made the report. The deputy said she was going to give us a little bit of time before she called their dad and told him that everything was fine to give us to go up to the Meeker County Courthouse to fill out the order for protection. So I called the short bus because I didn't have the car seats. My mother had taken those. And I had to take a bus up there, and I had the five bags in the suitcase and my 2 kids, and we took the bus up to the courthouse, and the bags were filled with documents, our proof as to what was going on, the abuse by the county and all the abuses. And we get to the courthouse, and they told me I had until 4:20 or 4:15 or something like that to see the judge. And it was about 2:30 when we got there. So we sat in the law library, me and my 2 little girls and all of our stuff. And I frantically filled out this order for protection by myself in the state that I was in, which was a frantic state. And I even remember one of the ladies came over from the court administration and complimented me on my children because she said, "Oh, your children are being so good," and they are so well behaved. My children are such good girls. I love you babies, by the way. And so at about 4:05, I go up to give the order for protection to give it to the judge, and the lady at the counter says the judge is done for the day. And then the bailiff comes, and after I said, "No, what do you mean? You told me I had until this time." And she's like, "I'm sorry, the judge is done for the day." And I said, "Well, we can't go home without a protective order." And she was like, "I'm sorry." And then the bailiff showed up, and he stood in front of us, and he said, "I'm sorry, ma'am, you got to go. You got to leave the building." And my daughter started to burst into tears because she didn't understand why the judge didn't want to hear her story. And then I started crying because my daughter's crying and we can't go home, and I've got all these bags and these 2 babies and nobody's helping us, and I didn't understand why nobody would help us. I understand now. But we ended up having to leave the building, and there was this couple that helped us, this young guy and this young girl who were at the court, and they were on foot also because I didn't have a car, see. And they helped me carry all my bags and walk my babies over to the American Legion across the street. And I grabbed a table in the back corner because I was still scared that Jeff was out looking for me and that, now the police were kind of on the tail. And, or they were aware of what was going on. So our tabs were being kept on us, basically. Let's put it that way. And so we sat in the back corner, and I ordered up some food. Luckily, I had money at that point, and I told the waitress that we were, waiting for my mother. And I had called my mother again. I said, "Mom," I said, "we need your help." And I said, "Sophia needs your help. We need your help. Can you please come help us?" And she finally came out again, and she took my children and I to this hotel because we couldn't go home. And so we were at a hotel because I had court the next day for my terroristic threats. I had to go and plead whether or not I was going to be guilty or not guilty or whatever. And, or no, maybe that was the omnibus hearing. I'm not sure. I had to court the next day. And so when we got to the hotel, I had to go back to our house because Sophia was because of her nose grunting problem. We were on that Benadryl treatment for 2 weeks. And so I had to go home and get the Benadryl. And some of our clothes and things because we clearly couldn't be home for a while. So I go back to my house, and I got spooked. I lived in a big house, all open windows, floor-to-ceiling windows in my whole entire house in the middle of the country. Now, my friend and I had already witnessed vehicles being parked at the top of my driveway with their lights off, driving away with their lights off. Like, I'd already knew I was being watched, and I went to go pick up the phone because I got spooked. And I was paranoid, I'm not going to lie, and rightfully so. And I pick up the phone, and there's all these weird beeps. And I was like, what the hell? And I hung up the phone again, and I picked it up, and I called 911. And they answered, and I told them, I said, I'm out here. I need to pack some things up. This is what's going on. And I said, I just was wondering if you could like send an officer out here to just stand at my door while I pack some things because I'm spooked. And they sent somebody out. They sent 2 officers out. And right when the officers got there, they came up into my bedroom and they did a little walk around to see if anybody was there or whatnot because I was thoroughly spooked. And when we were in my bedroom and I was packing up a suitcase of my girls' clothes and things, I mentioned the words sex trafficking and Carver County to this officer, who immediately went to go put his hand on his gun. Okay, I thought this man was gonna I thought he was going to shoot me in my back in my bedroom after I said that. Then the guy that he was with, the other officer, got on his shoulder phone or whatever, his shoulder walkie-talkie, and he called the investigator who had just the day before closed my CPS case, my open Child Protective Services case. He closed it, right? The one that from Saturday, which they never investigated, they didn't do anything. They did nothing. They opened it and then they closed it, opening up the door for my ex to come in and do an order of protection against me. So with my children. So the other officer gets off of his phone and says, "We've got to take you to the hospital." And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "Do you remember investigator blah, blah, blah?" He says that we need to take you to the hospital. And I'm like, "I'm not going to the hospital." I said, "I called you guys here for help." I'm like, "We need help here, and I have court tomorrow." And I'm like, "You're not taking me to the hospital." And so he took him 4 phone calls on his in 5 minutes he made to this investigator. And finally he was like, "All right, well, where are you staying and who's with the children and where are the children?" And at that point I was thoroughly scared now because now I realized what I had just done. What I had just done was told the people who I believe are involved in the sex trafficking that I know about the sex trafficking. And so I basically just put myself in major danger and my children. They followed me back to the hotel and they sat out there for about 20 minutes. And I remember sitting there watching them. Well, that night, after I went and kissed my babies goodnight and left them in the room with my mother, I went out to use the internet, the computer at the hotel. And I remember my friend, my domestic violence advocate, he was out at my house a couple of weeks before all this stuff went down, and he was telling me about this, Judge Perkins and Carver County corruption and blah, 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 and all this stuff, these mothers that were losing their children every time they reported sexual abuse and all this crazy stuff. And so I went on to that carvercountycorruption.com site, and that was when I came across the other pieces to the puzzle. And there's this thing called Signs of Safety. It's a program that they use to try and prevent sexual abuse, and I actually believe that it's used to train them how to sexually abuse. Then there's this thing called the Erickson's technique, and this is where it gets frightening because that is what my child has suffered. She has suffered from the Erickson's technique. And what the Erickson's technique is 3 parts. It's 1 part trance therapy, trance technique. It's 1 part hypnosis, and it's 1 part electroshock therapy. Now, I also forgot to tell you that on January 1st, my daughter came home and she had those damn bumps on her ankle again. They call them epidermis. It happens to be a direct result from electroshock therapy. When I took her to the skin doctors in 2011 when it first started. See, and what this electroshock therapy is, and this is the most frightening thing, they use electroshock therapy to alter the sexual behavior of children, to bring on aggression, to bring on regression, to change their minds, to alter their sexual behavior, to bring on spontaneous orgasms in children. It's highly disturbing, considering the behaviors that I have witnessed in my child over the course of 3 years. The hypnosis receipt that I found in the tablet that suddenly went missing 20 minutes before my arrest. And now there's no trace of it except for the fact that Carver County has that laptop, that tablet in their possession, in their custody. And then the phone calls that Jeff had been making after he brought Sophia home. And the thing about trance technique is it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So a random person would never know that that you're using a trance technique on a child. Just by the way they say their name and how they talk, it's very bizarre. So I kind of put all these things together, and I remember going, and then I read about the nice guys. Okay, that was the second time. The first time I'd heard about the nice guys was from my daughter at the age of 4, about how she wasn't going to listen to the nice guys in suits tell her to be naughty to her mommy anymore. I went back into the hotel room, and my daughter was sitting up, and it was about midnight. She was sitting straight up in the bed, and my mother was sitting on the bed, and I walked over to the bed, and I sat down on the bed, and I looked over at Sophia with conviction, and I said, Mommy knows why you're so scared. And I said that I'm going to protect us, and everything was going to be okay, and that she needn't worry. And she looked at me like she didn't have to say a word. We had a moment there on that bed, our eyes meeting, and my mom witnessed it, even though 10 minutes later she weirdly, completely and utterly denied that anything had even occurred or that anything was even said. It was very bizarre. I don't know. My mom needs help. Let's pray for her. So I went back out and I started doing some more research, and I was talking to some friends, and, eventually the next morning I had to go to court. And I actually made the judge read out what I wrote on that note card in front of the entire court. And I remember the people in the back were laughing. And I was bound and determined that I was going to bust out the sex trafficking right then and there in that courtroom. Only something made me hold it in. And that was because it wasn't the right time. But so I didn't have my car still because my mom wouldn't bring me home. My mom and my sister had an ulterior plan. They were going to help Jeff, my ex, get me put in a mental institute. And so I didn't know this at the time, but I went along with it. I went to go. My sister watched the kids while I was in court because I wouldn't let them out of my sight. And then my sister volunteered to take us back to her house in Apple Valley. And so we went to Apple Valley, and we stayed overnight. And while we were over there, I was talking to my little sister, and she was saying, Amy, maybe you should come move in with me. They have a basement, and, then you wouldn't be alone, and you'd have help, and you're so far out in the country. And, we had this whole plan where I was going to pay $700 a month, and it was going to be great, right? I was going to finally take all these boxes of evidence I've been collecting for 3 years, and I was going to make damn sure that Jeff was terminated from my children's, his rights were terminated. I'm sorry, not him terminated. Let me clarify, but that his parental rights were terminated on all the abuses that had been occurring, because I have proof. That's the funny thing, is that anybody who wants any proof as to what I'm saying, I have 10 boxes up in the barn over here that I would gladly love to give to somebody to investigate and to prove, because it's there. And so anyways, the next day, after we slept overnight, Thursday night, Friday was Valentine's Day, and here's where it gets bad. I realized that my sister was up to something, because I had found in her computer that she let me use her iPad, and I looked at her, I went into her Gmail just like I was going into the other Gmail, and honest to God, I wasn't snooping. I was going to use my own email account, and I saw this stuff. Like, these people are not hiding this very well. And I found these emails between my mother and my sister from 2 years prior, where they tried to get me into a mental institute because of whatever the hell. My mother wants custody of my children. She told me she could do a better job raising my children than I could. I'm sorry. she's a drunken alcoholic and very abusive and violent. So I find that very hard to believe. Anyways, that they had a whole visitation schedule planned out. My mom was going to have the girls, and I was going to go over there and visit my girls during the day and watch them on the weekends while they went up and had margaritas on the deck at the cabin. I mean, it was bizarre what I found. And my sister was acting all strange. And 5:30 p.m., come 5:30 p.m. on Valentine's Day, that 6 days after my daughter disclosed the sexual abuse by her daddy, it was his next scheduled visit with my children. And by law, I had to turn my children over to him at 5:30 p.m. And I knew he was going to come looking for me. I knew he was going to come with police. And I also knew that my mother and my sister had given up our location and that he knew where we were. So I had called a friend of mine to come pick me and my kids up to get us out of there by 5:30. Only I called an unreliable friend, and I kind of think she's somewhat involved in Jeff's little mob of people, because she's the one that told me a couple of years ago that Jeff was calling all of my friends in Facebook, which I met him in AA, and there's literally nothing that nobody doesn't know about me in AA, so it's like, what secrets are you going to find? Because I've spoken at every church basement and detox center and jail in Minnesota practically for 6 years and sponsored over 30 men and women. So it wasn't like I had very many secrets, right? Because secrets keep us sick. I just want to remind the viewers that. And so she screwed up and she wasn't going to come. And I remember going, God damn it. I'm like, Angie, I could have called a cab. I could have gotten us out of here. We're 15 minutes away. So I went upstairs and I told my little sister, I said, Brianne, you need to get us out of here. We need to drive out of here. And she was sitting in her bedroom with the door shut with her phone in there and just acting very bizarre. And she finally reluctantly got into her car and she's like, where do you want me to take you? And I'm like, just take me to a hotel. I just need to be out of here. So she brought us over to this hotel in Apple Valley, and I remember getting there, and I had a fight with her in the car about all this because she didn't believe anything that I was saying. She either didn't believe it, she's involved in it, or she's ignorant to it. One of the three, but either three, none of them were helping us. And so I got out of the car with my girls, and I had all those 5 bags of documents and a bag of clothes, and I was trying to get one of those carts and put all of our stuff up on the cart, and the cart fell off the curb and all of our stuff fell over. I'm reminding you, it's February in Minnesota and it's cold and there's snow. I finally get us inside the lobby, and I had my girls inside the entryway, and I get us inside the lobby and I go up to the front desk and I'm talking to the front desk clerk and I'm like, I'm fleeing a domestic abuse situation. And I said, and this is where I kind of screwed up too. And I said, and I found sex trafficking information and we're in danger. And it was probably a very radical story. Only the woman behind the counter believed me. And she told me she was going to help me. And she said she was going to because I told her, I said, I have money, but I can't stay at this hotel because my little sister knows my location and she's going to give it up. So I said, what I really need is for a ride out of this hotel to another hotel so that nobody knows where our location is until Monday, when I can go back to court to get a protective order, because I couldn't go home and I couldn't be anywhere that anybody knew of until I had a protective order on Monday. So I had 3 days that we couldn't go home and no car. Thank you, Mother. And so the lady comes over to me and tells me that she's got a shuttle bus and she's going to go to the Mall of America and she'd be happy to take me there to another hotel. And I was like, great. So I asked her if I could use the computer to book a hotel room. And she let me go behind the counter with my children, and we sat behind there, and I couldn't get the internet to work. And so then I was going to go and call the 1-800 number to book it over the phone. So I go back to the front desk with my kids, and what do I see out of the corner of my eye but 2 police officers walking into the hotel. They took me off to the side. My daughters were sitting down at the table with the other hotel lady came over and brought them a little snack and something to drink while I was talking to the police. And Sophia full well knew what was going on. This is why she was so deathly afraid to tell me the secret, by the way. And the police officers called the Dakota County Social Services person or whatever, and they came over and I told them what was going on. I told them what I found. I told them about the abuses for 3 years. I told them nobody was investigating, nobody was doing anything, and I told them that my children were not going over to their fathers. And they told me that I had to go on a 72-hour hold. So now the ambulance is called. Now I'm being taken off into a 72-hour hold with my children. And guess what? My little sister, the one that gave up my location and ultimately got me put on a 72-hour hold and got my children physically taken away from me, was sitting there in 2 minutes. She arrived at the hotel room, and they're trying to pin the phone call to the police on the front desk clerk. That's what it says in the police report. The front desk clerk took the fall for calling the police, when in fact it wasn't her, it was my little sister. And I just want to make sure that that's very clear. Because there's no way that the police had my sister's cell phone number, or that the front desk lady had my sister's cell phone number and they didn't know who I was. So how in the hell did my sister get there in 2 minutes, right? Good question, huh? So my sister's taken the kids. Dakota County gives custody of my children over to my sister for 72 hours. They put me on a 72-hour hold, so we were both supposed to get up out of the 72-hour hold at the same time. Mind you, it's Valentine's Day, which is a holiday, so that day doesn't count. Neither do the weekends. So I was already in the mental facility for 3 days before my 72 hours was up. It was officially 6 days. And then by then, they'd already talked to my mother, and my mother got them to keep me there for 4 more days, which I stayed voluntarily the last 4 days. But get this. My little sister transferred custody over to my stepbrother, who I have no idea who they even are. And him and his wife gave custody back to my children's father before the 72-hour hold was up. Okay. That's a hard moment for me. I'm sorry. So I get out of the mental facility. My father actually comes to pick me up, and I got served with a paper while I was in the mental facility, and it was for a motion ex parte hearing. Jeff had hired an attorney, paid a big bucks, downtown attorney, to do a motion ex parte hearing. So I'm out of the mental facility for 2 days, and I go and sit down in front of Judge Richard C. Perkins. And I know Judge Perkins because he's the one who called Jeff out in his false allegations of domestic abuse against me in 2012. And so I didn't know what was about to hit me. I didn't even know that there was a chance that I could lose my children to this man. But the attorney spoke for about 30 seconds to the judge. And then the judge looked over at me and said, "It's your turn." And I was sitting totally alone. And I started talking about the sexual abuse. And 15 seconds later, the judge says, "Nope, you're rambling." And he signed his name. And then this piece of paper flew across the desk to this bailiff, who gave it to his lawyer. And he stood up and put his jacket on and gave me the biggest shit-eating grin you have ever seen in your life. Right? And child support was sitting there with him, patting him on the back, They're all in on it. This is, so now he has temporary custody of my 2 daughters, the 2 daughters that he's been sexually abusing for 3.5 years. And forget the abuse on me, because what he wants is my demise. You see, he wants me dead or in a mental facility or in jail. It's not going to happen, by the way. And it was 35 days that he wouldn't let my children speak to me or see me. And the first phone call that I got was from my Vivi Rose. She's 3 years old. And she called me and she was screaming on the phone, "Mommy, Mommy, I need you, Mommy, I need you," for 20 minutes. And all of a sudden the phone went click and it hung up. And it was about a week before I got another phone call. And that phone call was from Sophia. And now, mind you, I have a restraining order out against me, so I can't call his phone number. See, that's part of the trick. The trick is that while they're sexually abusing your children, while they're grooming the institutions, while the institutions are helping them abuse the parent with the children through child support, through social services, whatever, they are grooming your family to trust them, and they're sex trafficking your children. Child porn, using hypnosis, electroshock therapy. I mean, this thing is so sick, it's not even funny. I asked my daughter one time what church her daddy goes to.
And you know what she said to me? She said, my daddy's a liar. She was 5. What the hell does that mean? My daddy's a liar? What? Like, so the next phone call was from Sophia. And she calls me and she's like, hi, Mommy. And she's like crying a little bit and she's teary-eyed. And my daughter's not really a crier, so this was shocking. You know, it's hard. And she was like, there's something I have to tell you. And she's like, I got to go upstairs. And so I think she's walking up the stairs or whatever. And she's like giggling. She's like, hee, my daddy's following me. And I'm like, that's okay, baby. You can talk. You can, you know, Mommy, you can tell Mommy anything. And she's like, hee, my daddy's listening in on our conversation. And I said, that's okay, baby. You can tell Mommy anything. And she's like, okay. She's like, I got to tell you something. Click. The phone hangs up. I don't get to see or speak to my children for 2 more weeks. This is called psychological abuse, people. Not only on my children or myself, but I mean, not only on myself, but on my children. What he did, he told my children for 35 days that their mother just left them and doesn't love them. Okay? Imagine being 2 little girls who have never, ever been separated from their mother since conception in their whole life. All they know is their mother. And this is what they're all of a sudden being told. Now I'm put on supervised visitation. Now I'm paying $100 a week in cash only to a visitation center where I'm being monitored and sat with 2 people sitting there writing down my every word. And when you don't speak loud enough, they write that down as a mark against you. My daughter held up a toy to her vagina after waving to the writers to try and get their attention, and she held it there. And I looked over at her and I said, Sophia, I said, baby, why did you do that? And she said, because it feels good. Okay? This is not my child, people. This is something that is happening to her, and she's been trying to holler at us, at all of us, for 3 years, giving signs and signals in every way she possibly can, except speaking, because she's afraid her mother's going to die. She needs help. I have been seeing my children every week since, must be April, March. One of the first times, it was a long time before I first got to see them. Paying cash. I've lost our home again. It only took 12 weeks at $100 a week of seeing them. And that's not child support, people. That's just cash for visitation center. Why is a visitation center extorting children? You want to know what happened on Mother's Day? Mother's Day, I got a brand new check card that Friday, and they didn't send me my PIN number, and my bank was 65 miles away, so I figured I'll just go early and I'll write a check, right? And I'll show them that I have the funds in my account on my phone. I go to 3 different banks that morning, and no one would let me cash a check for $100, so I didn't have cash. So I go to the visitation center, and like a bouncer at the door, the guy's standing there for the cash. And I said, I don't have cash, but I showed him my funds in my bank. I said, I have the money, I just don't have cash. Can I write a check? What can I do? My friend will drive from 2 hours away to come bring cash. Like, what can I do? And he said, you've got to cancel your visit. And I said, I can't cancel my visit. I said, he'll tell my children that I just didn't show up. And he's like, you have to cancel. And so I'm bawling at the front door, and I know what this man's going to do to my children, what he's going to do to their precious little minds if I don't have this visit. And I begged this guy to just at least let my children know that I was there. Please let my children know that I was there. The next day was Mother's Day, people. He finally says, okay, I'll break the rules. And he's like, I'll make sure that they know that you were here. So crying, I walk away and go to my car, devastated, knowing that my children are going to be devastated because they drove 40 minutes to come see me. And this was like our 9th or 10th visit or something like that, but it was very, anyways. So I'm almost to my car, and all of a sudden the side door opens up, and my 2 little girls come out, and they see me, and they're like, Mommy, Mommy, and they're running up to me, and they run up to me. And I knelt down, and I had Sophia on my left leg, and I had Vivi on my right leg, and they were sitting there, and I'm hugging them both so tight, and I knew I didn't have much time. And I didn't, because I was telling him that Mommy couldn't have the visit today and how sorry I was. And then the door opened up, and Jeff, their dad, and the visitation center guy come walking out. And the visitation center guy whispers over to Jeff. And then the two of them start running to me, running to my children. They ran as fast as they could, ripped my children up out of my arms. My children had to throw their Mother's Day gifts that they had made for me at my feet. They turned around to throw their dandelions that they had picked for me down at my feet. And the visitation center guy stood between me and my children and waited until they got into the car and drove away. And I'm still kneeling down on my knees with my hands up going, is this really necessary? And that's exactly how I said it. So now I'm being treated like a dangerous criminal because I don't have cash. Okay? I'm a paralegal. I work in the law. I grew up in the law. My passion was the law and children. This is absurd. This judge knows that I know that he's connected to sex trafficking. This judge knows that I know that he is protected and funded by cartel family money. They know that I know that the police are involved, the bailiffs are involved, Child Protective Services is involved, the guardian ad litems are involved, the psychiatrists, the psychologists, the social services workers, the investigators, the domestic violence advocates, the courts, the judges, you name it. Anybody you would actually call for help in a situation such as ours is actually the people who are in on it. To the point where I couldn't figure out for 3 years how a single woman could go homeless with 2 children and get the food stamps cut off. And why would nobody help us? I couldn't figure it out. Now I know. There's a plan out there, people. And it's not just happening to me. I happen to be one of about 10 in Carver County alone. Check out carvercountycorruption.com. And there are plenty of other mothers. There's plenty of other information as to what's going on. But they are giving the abusers, the pedophiles, the children, and they're putting the protective mothers away. There have been mothers who have been taken to other states and locked up in mental facilities. Another mother was sentenced to 5 felonies because her daughter was running away from the father who was sexually abusing her and running to her mother against a court order and for her to not see her children because that's what they do. That's what they do. They make you crazy by abusing your children, and then when you reach out for help, they just close your cases, so you're forced to keep dealing with them. They're all in on it, and I need help because I've got 2 little girls out there who I promised that I was going to stop the abuse, and Mommy keeps promises, not secrets. And I just want to know why the investigator, Pat Murphy of Carver County, last Monday told me that not only is he not going to look at or talk about the sex trafficking information on that Lenovo tablet of my daughter's, but instead he wanted my mental health records. So you see where this is going. They're going to try and put me in a mental facility or in jail or both and take my children. And God only knows what will happen to my children because I have only just tipped the iceberg of what is actually going on. And all I'm asking for is for people to help me investigate and find out why no one is investigating. That's it.
It's obvious that this is one door onto a much larger and very dark world.
Yes. I'm in groups with mothers, with 10,000 mothers in just the United States who are all experiencing what I am experiencing. I mean, I don't know if it's on the level of sex trafficking, but 10,000 mothers nationwide who have reported sexual abuse and the abusers end up with the children. Whoever has the money has the control, you see. And that's, you got to follow the money. That's what I want to know. Where's the money going? That's where I would start. Awful lot of fraud going on out there. An awful lot of cover-ups and an awful lot of closures, you know. I am on the verge of losing two of the most beautiful little children that God could have ever gifted me with. And that's not going to happen. See, they messed with the wrong woman's children if they wanted to keep this a secret. Because mommy doesn't keep secrets. Not this mommy. I don't really know where to go from here, except that I have a guardian ad litem. I have 3 mandated reports with my new psychologist. Oh, I should tell you about the psychologist and what they said, and the psychiatrist. The first psychiatrist at the first mental place in this first 72-hour hold back in February, that psychiatrist yelled at me across the table how intelligent I was. Amy, you are intelligent. You are intelligent. Okay, then, after I lost my children, I had to go into this thing called partial hospitalization because I had to go sit in a classroom from 9 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock in the afternoon because I didn't know how to breathe without my children. They put me on 6 different medications at the time. 4 of them were anti-anxiety, anti-agitation, sleep, this, that. And then the county psychologist and the county psychiatrist, they told me that I was delusional. Well, then they did me a favor. And after Mother's Day, they put me on a 72-hour hold again because I missed a psychiatry appointment. And it was at that facility that the director of the whole entire mental ward sat in front of me, who didn't even know why I was there. He let me go 2 days early, and he looked at me and said, delusions don't last this long, okay? And then I found the next psychologist, who for the first time in 3.5 years, I found somebody who actually believes everything I've ever said, and has made now 3 reports. 3 mandated reports have been made in 3 weeks. And now, all of a sudden, my guardian ad litem has gone silent. No one is doing anything. No one's moving. And what they're going to do is they're going to try and say that I'm mental. And while they're trying to figure out if they know I'm not crazy. But when they're trying to figure out what to do with me, and while they're going to be forced, because of these mandated reports that are coming through from somebody who's credible, like a credible psychologist, they're going to be forced to remove the children. And where do you think they're going to put my children? In foster care. Because there's no money to be made in bringing my children back to me, their mother. Not only that, but that implicates Carver County in their negligence with this entire situation. My daughter's been penetrated. 3 years ago, when I first reported this to Carver County, it could have been stopped right then and there. Now my daughter's been penetrated. Just sit on that for a minute. She's 7. Thank you so much. This is a horrible subject, but it's going on all over the place. It's global. It's not just here. It's not just me. I am one of many. Our children are, this is happening to hundreds of, probably thousands of children all over the globe. I mean, pedophiles are ruling our world right now. It's stopping with me. I'm stopping it. I promised. I don't have a choice. I don't have a choice. So I'm so grateful that you gave me this opportunity to tell this horrible story. But I've got two really strong little girls, and I'm pretty strong myself, and we're gonna be all right, because we are.
Well, Amy, we're going to do what we can to help you. We're going to put your information on the website, and I believe Russell has already talked to you about what it is we can do for you.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for telling us your story. If anyone wants to help out there, we're going to put all your information on the YouTube channel, on the Facebook page, and we'll be doing updates with you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a very different program, and hopefully we're going to have a good resolution. This has been Secrets of Saturn. Good night.